Welcome to Spine Chilling Stories, where you hear true horror stories around the world that are both creepy and chilling. So let's dive in. The Haunted Graveyard. In the heart of Sudan, a small village stood untouched by the modern times, its people bound by tradition and folklore. Just beyond its outskirts, hidden behind a dense row of trees, lay an ancient graveyard, older than the village itself. The villagers never went there after the sunset, whispering about the entity that lurked among the tombstones, a shape-shifting Jinn that fed on fear and lost souls. It was said that those who entered graveyard at night would see their loved ones, but what they saw was never truly them. One evening, Hassan, a young farmer, returning home late after visiting neighboring village. The air was thick with the scent of desert. The sky was an endless canvas of darkness, broken only by moonlight. The village path wound close to the graveyard. Hassan walked faster, unwilling to acknowledge the looming headstones just beyond the trees. It was haunted feeling, as if something was following him, as if he was not alone. Then, just right there, a voice called out, "Hassan, my child, Hassan, turn around, turn around." He froze in place, his breath catching in his throat. He knew that voice. Slowly, he turned his head and saw a face, a very familiar face that he'd known since his childhood. Standing by the ancient crumbling grave was an elderly woman draped in white robes. Her figure was bathed in the pale glow of moon. Her face was calm, but eerily silent, and a feeling of a gaunt and hauntedness was there on her face, as if she didn't belong here, into the world of living. This was no ordinary woman. It was his grandmother, but that was impossible. She had died 3 years ago. Hassan felt his knees weaken. His grandmother had raised him as a boy, and not a day passed that he didn't miss her. He wanted to run, to leave, and curse the place behind, but his feet moved forward. "Grandmother? Grandmother, is that you?" he whispered, his voice barely hearable. She nodded, slowly, her expression unchanging, as if she didn't feel any emotion. Something was wrong. The air around them grew thick, sophisticating. The wind had died. The village, the desert, the world itself seemed to vanish, leaving only the graveyard. Hassan took another step. The ground beneath him felt wrong, as if he was stepping through water rather than sand. His grandmother remained still, her black eyes staring into him, and those black eyes looked lifeless, It was not the eyes of a human being. A chill ran down his spine. Where were the whites of her eyes? It's not human. It was impossible. How can a human being have eyes of a total darkness? Then she twitched. It was subtle, almost unpredictable, but the movement was unnatural, jerky, like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. Hassan stopped. His instincts screamed at him to run, but it was too late. The woman's face began to distort. Her frail hands stretched into clawed, bony things, her white robe darkening into a shifting, shadowy mass. Her mouth widened beyond human limits, relieving nothing but darkness inside. Hassan stumbled backward, his body locked in a paralyzing terror. He cannot move. He tried, but as if his body was stuck in a place out of sheer fear. The thing that has worn his grandmother's face rose taller and taller and taller. Its limbs was elongated as it let out a sound, a hideous, echoing wail that was neither human nor beast. You shouldn't have come, Hassan. But it is no longer his grandmother's voice. It was something ancient, something unhuman. Again, that thing screamed, a bloody murder scream that made him so terrified and paralyzed on his spot. And then it lagged forward. Hassan's family found him the next morning, collapsed at their doorstep. His skin was cold, his lips were blue, his body was drenched in sweat. For 3 days he remained unconscious, murmuring in the language no one understood. His hands clawed at the air, as if fighting something unseen. When he finally woke, his eyes were hollow, vacant, as though part of him had been left behind in the graveyard. He had no memory of what happened at that night. Villagers whisper among themselves. The Jinn had marked him. From that day forward, Hassan never spoke of what he saw. He refused to walk near the graveyard, even in daylight, out of the sheer fear of that creature, of the Jinn of the graveyard. The village knew the truth. The Jinn was still there, watching, waiting for its next victim to walk beside the graveyard, and no one would dare to step the graves after the dark. For more stories like this, keep watching the spine-chilling stories where your nightmares come true.